everyone, today I'm going to show you how I made my Sunken City shadow box. My only thought going into this project is that I wanted to do a different perspective than what I usually do. So instead of looking straight on at a scene, I wanted something where you would be looking down at something. And my only thought was, let's pretend that we're looking through the surface of some water and look down at something that could be like hidden under the water. And that was the only thing going through my head. But after a while, I figured it would be kind of cool to do like a whole city hidden under the water. But I didn't trust myself at all to draw a cityscape on my own, especially not looking down at some buildings. So after looking at a bunch of references, I decided to use one of my Blame manga. Blame's a manga written and drawn by Nihei Tsutomu. And I used one of the panels from there, which ironically is not a down view of a city. It's actually the main character looking at a corridor. But I think it worked quite well if you flip the manga and added this top layer of a character sitting on some water on a boat. And I wasn't actually sure how to do this top panel. I thought there are two ways about to do this. You could either just cut out the ripples that I'm drawing here and make that the only holes in the panel, which would mean that if the shadow box wasn't on, you would only be looking at that top layer. You wouldn't see the city, and it would only show as a shadow when you turned on the lights later on. Or you could do what I did end up doing, which was to cut out the entire water bit and only leave strips of paper that represented the ripples and the boat and the flowers. And I wasn't quite sure going into this of what would be better, because I was a bit worried that the box would look really confusing, that there would just be too many lines overlapping and you wouldn't know what you were looking at. Jury's still out on whether it's too confusing or not. I guess you guys can tell me what you think. Drawing all of these layers was basically me breaking down the manga panel that I used into like several layers to give it more depth and really make it seem like it goes deeper and deeper, and there's no like bottom. It could keep going forever. And once I figured out what to put on which layer, I just had to sort of dirty it up a little bit, add some fish, add some algae, add some wear and tear, because the idea is that the city has been in water for, I don't know, decades, centuries, who knows. Cutting out this panel was actually the most time-consuming one out of the entire project, which I wasn't expecting. I thought, I'm just cutting a bunch of lines, how tough can that be? That is going to be done really quick. Turns out it took about 2 hours to do this one. The full project took about, I think, over 11 hours, if I'm remembering right. It took much longer than I expected. So you're watching a video sped up 60 times. But yeah, as I was cutting this, I was really worried that it would make this box like impossible to look at. That all those lines would make it way too confusing. I hope it hasn't. I think I'm happy with the way it turned out. And I've asked a few people who told me they can make out what's happening, so maybe I'm worrying for nothing. But as I was cutting this, I was thinking, odds are I'm gonna have to redo that top layer and do the other idea I mentioned, which was to have the exact same drawing, but instead of cutting out everything, but the ripples, like you can see here, I would make a mostly filled in layer, if that makes sense, and only cut out the holes where the ripples would be, and where the flowers were, and where the boat was. I thought I might do that anyway, just to sort of have 2 layers to compare and see what worked well. I ended up not doing it just because I got lazy, and I figured, you know what, good enough. And I did kind of like that you could see the city even though the lights were off, because that makes the box interesting without the lights on as well as with the lights on. For all the city layers, it was a question of figuring out which lines to make thicker and which lines to leave thinner, so that it would just be like subtle details that you'd have to kind of squint to look at. There are lots of instances, like here, the ladder, for example, and some other layers where there's a bridge where you could hollow it out more than what I did, and sort of to show the panels that are on the bridge and like the various details, make them more pronounced, but it also made the city a bit less solid than what I wanted. And if you have too many see-through things, it makes the box even more confusing, which is already a bit it's already a bit too confusing compared to what I would have wanted. But see here, for example, you can see the bridge has a bunch of panels that I could have just done an empty square, but I wanted that bridge to be like a solid thing that stretches out into the distance. The fish were also kind of tricky to cut out because they're only connected to each other by just one tiny bit of a fin or of a tail, which made it really delicate to cut out. And I don't remember where, but I did lose one fish. So I've got one group of them that is one fish short compared to the drawing, just because I didn't realize that I cut through the one thing that was tying them to the rest. Which is fine. I'm the only one who knows. I won't tell you where it is, haha. And this is what I mean with the thickness of the lines. All of the algae, the wear and tear marks that are on the walls here, is something where I only cut through the paper once and didn't make the line any thicker than that, so that it gives the wall more texture, but it doesn't draw your eye, and it doesn't distract from the main structure or the main shape that you want to make stand out. I think this is the final group of fish, and by then I was kind of glad because also when you're cutting something this tiny and this detailed, it's kind of, after a while, you kind of lose track of where you are, and it becomes tough to figure out which is the bit that you're supposed to cut and which is the bit that's supposed to stay filled in. So I think it looked pretty good in the end, so those are good details. I'm happy I added them, but they were a bit one of the trickier parts of this box to make. And for this final panel here, I hesitated with adding some algae and stuff at the back, because that strip you're seeing in the middle there is the main light source for the box. That's where the light from the LED lights that comes from the back shines through and lights the whole drawing, the whole box, sorry. So I didn't want too many details to clutter it, because I wanted as much light as possible, because that whole back layer is already quite solid. But at the same time, I didn't want to I didn't want it to be too plain either compared to the rest of the city. I made a separate person to go on top of the boat, because I wasn't, before I started cutting, I decided that I was going to paste the character on top of the boat rather than just cut out one shape that would be person plus boat, because they don't really stand out from the boat all that much. You just see a tip of their head, so it wouldn't, it would have made the boat more confusing. I'm mentioning that a lot, but I was really trying to, I don't know, simplify the box as much as possible with make a really complex idea as simple as I could make it and still keep all the details that I wanted to add. And again, this is the cutting foam layers, foam strips that you stick at the back of each layer to give the box more depth and make the scene more spaced out, and which allows more light to shine through, which is also important. And this is the final result, which jury's still out on whether I could have simplified this more, on whether I could have made that top layer clearer than it was. But I think generally speaking, I like that perspective quite well. I want to try it again, of like looking down into something rather than straight at something. And for all my talk of making something less confusing, I actually like intricate stuff. I like making complicated scenery. So I had fun with it. But thank you very much for watching. Follow the link in the description if you're interested in buying this box. Follow me on Instagram for more updates on what new projects I'm working on. And see you next time.